Hey, good morning, everyone. It's wonderful to be back here in London. This is an incredible venue. I wasn't here last year, but I was here the year before, and I talked to Matt about it, and when he told me about this venue, I was excited to come here and join you today. We have an incredible agenda, as you've seen, a lot of great speakers and a lot of incredible content, so I won't take up too much time. I did want to provide an update on sort of where we are as a business, because we've been in the press a lot lately, and talk a little bit about that. But first of all, I wanted to thank you for being customers of Ekahau and the other products and services we offer today. Without you, we wouldn't have a business, and we do what we do every day to support you with the products and services that we offer. So thank you for being customers. The second thing I want to do is thank Open Reality. They're a great partner of ours. They've been a great partner for a long time. And with them, we're able to put on these events as well as with the other exhibitors as well. So thank you all for helping to make that happen and make this a good event for everybody. And then, what I'd like to do is really get into sort of what's in the news lately. So in March, there was an announcement by Accenture of their intent to acquire Ookla. And there's a lot of chat in the media, there's a lot of chat in social media as well as in the press about what are the implications for us as a business. Today, we're still separate. We're still owned by Ziff Davis. The deal has not closed yet. We announced it because we're part of a public company and we have an obligation, and legally we had to, we could say, file and talk about the deal that's coming. What's interesting about the deal is that we will become part of Accenture, but they're acquiring the entire business. So everything that we offer today, all the services we have, all the brands we have will continue. And they've been asked publicly about this and what their intent is for the business, and it will run business as usual. And I'm heavily involved in the conversations with them, and there's a lot of discussion going on right now as we move towards closing the deal. But for all intensive purposes, we're going to be moving our ownership from being part of Ziff Davis to being part of Accenture, but our products and our services will remain. And so we'll continue to offer Ekahau. In fact, what's exciting about the opportunity is we're going to be investing more and accelerating our product development across all of these products, whether it's Ekahau, whether it's speed test, whether it's down detector, or even root metrics. And so these are really important products. The brands are going to stay, the products are going to stay. We'll continue to work with you, our customers, as well as our partners. So none of that's going to change. It's simply really a shift in the ownership structure from Ziff Davis to Accenture. It's an exciting time for our business. As I say, it gives us an opportunity to kind of double down and really build and accelerate our product development and continue to support our customers. So, when you look at it, there's a lot of chatter about there. The reality is, we're actually going to be, impartial, and we're going to be a part of the Accenture family, but we're going to preserve and maintain our brands and our products and go forward with that as well. So that's really important for us. It's important for you, our customers, and our partners that we work with every day. And you'll see more as we get closer to close and when that deal happens. So it still could be a couple of months away. But in the meantime, it's business as usual, and it'll continue to be business as usual even after the acquisition of the business. So exciting time for that. So when I look at sort of what we do at Ookla, and this is, again, not going to change as we move through this transition, we're all about collecting better data. And so when you look at our business, regardless of which platform we're on, whether it's through Ekahau, whether it's speed test, whether it's down detector, we're in the business of collecting data and actually using that data and building tools that allow us to draw insights and allow us to deliver insights into that data that allow us to deliver better outcomes for your customers, for our customers, and whoever we serve in the market. That's not going to change. If anything, we're going to accelerate that and continue to grow that and make that more and more valuable for our customers as we go forward. So it's really about collecting that data, doing it in a judicious way, in the appropriate way, and then also being able to draw those insights and build the tools around that data that allows us to deliver really good KPIs for our customers. And that's today what we do. It's what we did yesterday, and it's going to be what we do tomorrow as well. So we don't see any change in that. And the one thing I like to talk about is, some things haven't changed, and you guys are in this business as well, and it's interesting to me that Wi-Fi still continues to be a problem. That has not changed. 60 to 70% of connectivity issues really come down to bad Wi-Fi, whether you're in the enterprise, whether you're in the home, wherever you are. And people think of Wi-Fi as really simple. They think of it as easy, it's unlicensed, they just go throw it up and it should work. You guys know that's not the case. It takes a lot of work to optimize the network. It takes a lot of work to make the product work well. But customers still see a problem, and they don't attribute it to Wi-Fi necessarily. They attribute it to whoever's the service provider, and often the service provider takes the heat, but we need to continue to work on improving the Wi-Fi experience in the home, in the business, in the building, in the enterprise. So that hasn't changed. What also hasn't changed is the expectation of customers. Throughput still matters, coverage really matters, and consistency of experience continue to matter. That's been the case in this industry for a long time. That has not changed. What has changed is the expectations, and the quality of that experience continues to raise, and people's expectations continue to go up. So even though you have a great network, the expectation gets raised when you have a great network, and you've got to continue to make it better. So, what's exciting about this industry and this business is it never stops. It's constantly moving, and it creates a great opportunity for all of us in this industry. The other thing that is shifting a little bit, and it has done over the last couple of decades, but it's not going to change going forward, is everybody's always connected, always on, and everything is expected to work all the time. And so with Down Detector, this is another product that we have. We're monitoring over 33,000 services today in more than 67 countries and 33 languages. And so, this is an important platform because it provides an early signal of what's going on. Because you may have a great network, you may have a great solution, but the customer's perception is that it's not working because the interaction with the services is a problem. So, it really gives us sort of an outside in or a customer view of what's going on, and their perception of the experience is influenced by that, perhaps even more so than what they see in terms of the connectivity in the last 200-300 feet with Wi-Fi. So, these things are not changing, but some things are changing, and no presentation is complete without talking about AI. So I'm going to touch on AI. It's like if you don't talk about AI today, then you're sort of yesterday's news. So, but I did want to talk about network readiness for AI, and this is I'm an old teletraffic guy. I worked on teletraffic theory many years ago, designing and optimizing networks for different load conditions, and it really is interesting to watch the dialogue in the industry and what's going on and how these workloads are evolving. And I'm going to touch on that a little bit as I talk about innovation. But when you do look at AI, it is changing the nature of the traffic profile on the network, which has huge implications for how you design and optimize networks. And so the simplest thing to look at is the downlink-uplink ratio and the split there. And there is an expectation, and you do see it in the traffic profiles, as we talk about more multimodal interaction with the content, that there is going to be more pressure on the uplink, and the performance on the uplink needs to be there. And so, a lot of networks are uplink limited, and the design for coverage is limited by the uplink. And so what you've really got to look at is, okay, what does that split ratio look like? It has huge implications across the industry in terms of site density, performance, and optimization, because the uplink optimization becomes really, really key. And that's going to become important. There's also the session duration, and that really goes together with the next point, which is the burstiness potential, or if you look at the Hurst exponent, you look at sort of the nature of the traffic on the network, because if you look at sort of median or average, it's very deceptive because the nature of the traffic is very, very bursty. And so you've sort of got to look at, okay, how much concurrency is there, and what's my buffer, what's my capacity within the transport to be able to support these loads as they're hitting different parts of the system. But the durations are longer too, so you've got this naturally longer duration, but very, very high burstiness traffic that's happening in those session durations. So it is very interesting when you start looking at the modeling of the traffic and the expectation of the customer for the interaction. And so how does that impact the way we design and optimize the networks? And again, it's not one and done, because these loads are changing. So even if you look at different models right now on the LLM side, they each have different profiles. They operate differently, and the rhythm of the traffic is actually different. And so the profiles are different, whether it's Claude, Gemini, or even ChatGPT. So this is an area that's getting a lot of focus right now. The other one is loaded latency. Anybody can measure latency, but loaded latency is critical. And you see networks perform very differently under load based on a lot of different conditions. So it's really important to look at sort of the performance under load, because often that's when customers are interacting and the traffic is very, very high. So that's another one that we need to be monitoring. And then multi-server latency becomes important, because it's not just about connecting to one endpoint, it's now multiple endpoints concurrently and systematically through these sessions. And so it's not good enough just to measure to a single server or a single platform or a single CDN. You've actually got to be looking at sort of the performance across that. The last thing I touched on earlier is around adapting to innovation. Innovation is happening very, very quickly in this space as you look at AI models and AI capability. And one example of this is TurboQuant. I don't know how many people looked at this paper. It got published by Google about a month ago. But it's really interesting in terms of the development around sort of quantization and a transform function that allows you to basically increase the, the context window. It allows you to reduce the memory footprint and improve the power consumption on a device. So really, the implication of this is that I can now move AI inference down onto a mobile device, and I can have a long context window on a device, which is incredible, because people are looking at really, up until recently, I've got to store all that, and I've got to do the inference from the cloud. This capability allows us to move that inference down onto a device and to consumer electronics equipment. So that, and then the amount of compute and the power consumption and the memory footprint you need actually reduces. And so it has this huge impact. And so again, with this one innovation, it's going to change the nature of what the traffic looks like and how we think about these networks. But there's another dynamic that comes with this, and there's a chatter in the industry around this right now, which is Jevons paradox. So while you lower the marginal cost and improve the capability, you actually increase the demand, which offsets kind of what you might see in terms of the advantage you're getting out of this capability. So that's another dynamic to take into account. My point here is that AI workloads are going to become more and more prevalent on the networks. The way we design and optimize these networks needs to take this into account, regardless of whether it's in the enterprise, whether it's in the home, whether it's in the wide area, it's a factor. And then there's innovation happening in and around this capability that is going to evolve. So what we think we're doing today is going to quickly change as more and more innovation comes into the space. So, look, I think it's exciting. I mean, this industry is never boring. But underneath all of this, none of this is possible without connectivity. We can talk about AI all the time, but you cannot have AI delivered to consumers or businesses without connectivity. And we're obviously in that business of making that better. So I thought I'd throw a couple of data points in here because I find it interesting. It's interesting to talk about the theory and what's going on, but this is some real world data. So there's a couple of examples here where we started looking at, and the team at Ookla has been doing some analysis looking at like networks and where do we perform today and are they ready for these kind of workloads given what we believe about the traffic today. And that could change as the traffic profiles shift. But essentially what you're looking at here is sort of median upload speed as well as sort of the multi-server latency. And you'll see there across here just different networks we've looked at to understand where they are today and their ability to support these workloads. And you'll see that it's a scatter plot. There's a lot of variation depending on which country you're in. This is at a country level, but you can get right down to a building level if you want as well, and you'll see a lot of variation. So there's a lot of work to be done if we're actually going to make this a mass market product and make it pervasive. The networks, there's a lot of work that needs to be done to get the latency down on the multi-server side, but also the upload and the uplink speed to where it needs to be. But this is only one dimension of that problem. The second dimension is cloud. Whether we're supporting these platforms from the cloud, I find this chart absolutely fascinating because with all the investment that's going on in the industry and all the talk about building out data centers and deploying GPUs and all the infrastructure investment that's going on in different countries, you'll see what's happening with the cloud latency in the last 12 months. So, there's going to be there's work that needs to be done to get this latency back down again. But it is interesting to look at these curves and what's been happening. And so we'll be tracking this. Again, we show it at a country level, but you can go really way down into the details. It has to do with where the data centers are located, the connectivity between the data centers, how they're, where the traffic load is moving, how much can you push towards the edge, and what that customer experience is around the edge. So again, it's all about sort of, are we building the networks and can they support the future traffic profiles that are coming? And then, let me wrap up by saying, in our business, it's all about improving connectivity for everybody. Wherever you are, whatever business you're in, whether it's at the home, whether it's in the enterprise, that's what we do. And fixing bad Wi-Fi is still an issue. We all know that, you all know that. But it's a critical link in this chain. And it's really important that we address that. But, that's not going to go away. Wi-Fi is getting more and more complex, more and more sophisticated. There's more and more capabilities. But customers don't see that connection necessarily, but they need that connection to work really, really well in order to be able to take advantage of all these services that are coming. And then we do need to prepare every network, wherever you are. Enterprise, wide area networking really needs to be able to support these AI workloads because behind that is an incredible customer experience. And the way people are going to interact with their network is going to have a huge impact on that and that expectation. And then the last point I'll leave you with is around validation. It's one thing to do a design, it's one thing to do a deployment, but it's not one and done, as I said. It's more, we've got to continually validate it. The traffic is shifting, the loads are shifting, the users are shifting. How do we make sure we're constantly validating the performance around coverage? Coverage is critical for everybody. They expect to get connectivity anywhere and at any time. And then the consistency of the experience. But there's also another point that I'll leave here is resilience. Customers expect this to work all the time, anywhere, everywhere. And so, that has obviously implications in how we design and optimize infrastructure going forward. So I think I've taken a little more of my time. Someone who needs no introduction. It's Matt. I don't even have to mention his surname. That's a really cool thing to say. Hey, you got Matt coming up next. So thank you for your time. I'll be around all day and can answer any questions you guys have outside the forum here. But next up is Matt. So.